Alright, gentlemen, for this week, we'll be focusing on the last two parts of reproductive system. And in this really short video, we want to understand how fertilization happen. So I'll be bringing you step by step through how the fusion of a sperm and egg happened. So that's the first. And then the second part, we'll look at how a fertilized egg developed into a zygote. Alright, and what happens to the zygote after that. So there are two parts to this entire short video that I'll be covering. So we talked about this in class before, right? How identical and fraternal twins are formed. And as you can see in the picture over here, identical twins are always of the same gender. Whereas for fraternal twins, they could either be same or different gender. This is because of the way that twins are formed, and I believe you recall how it happened for identical twins, one egg, one sperm. Alright, but for fraternal egg, it's two different egg, alright, with two different sperm. So as a result, you can see that they have very different features. All right, as you can see, the last picture is a picture of a fraternal twin. All right, they look different, like, you know, based on the picture, you can see that same mouth shape, same nose shape, but the eyes are slightly different. All right, this is because, all right, the different sex cells carry different genetic materials. Alright, let's continue. So, before we enter fertilization, I want to reiterate the difference between sexual reproduction and sexual intercourse. So, sexual reproduction, alright, is the process of fertilization actually, where the nucleus, okay, to be more specific now, it's not just the sperm and egg fusing together, but the nucleus of the sperm and the nucleus of the egg. All right, why nucleus? It's because nucleus carry genetic material. All right, and when the male and female gametes fuse together, they form a zygote, which helps to restore normal chromosome number for proper development. Alright, what is the normal human chromosome number? That would be 46 chromosome. Alright, so 23 from the sperm and 23 from the ovum will help to restore the normal chromosome number of 46. Alright, and because the sperm only carries half the amount of genetic material from any individual, so think about it, the different combinations of sperms in a man and eggs in a woman will give rise to genetically dissimilar offspring. So just look at you know, yourself compared to your parents and yourself compared to your siblings. We are all genetically dissimilar from each other. Alright, and sexual intercourse refers to the act of the insertion of the penis into the vaginal canal to deposit semen for fertilization to occur. Alright, so be very careful of the difference and the definitions. So let's take a look at this simple animation to understand what happens during fertilization. I want you to pay very careful attention to the interaction between the sperm and the egg.
While you release only a single egg each month, your partner releases millions of sperm in a single ejaculation, all with an eye on that single prize. But only one of those sperm will be crowned the victor. As soon as one lucky sperm cell succeeds in penetrating the egg, the egg immediately undergoes a chemical reaction that prevents other sperm cells from following suit. Then, the chromosomes carried by the sperm and egg come together, and the egg is officially fertilized. The fertilized egg then begins a rapid descent to the uterus. Over the next 7 days, the human embryo undergoes multiple cell divisions in a process called mitosis. At the end of this transition period, the embryo becomes a mass of very organized cells, called a blastocyst. Once the embryo reaches the blastocyst stage, approximately 5 to 6 days after fertilization, it breaks out of its protective covering and begins the process of implantation in the uterus. To find out how your baby grows and develops each month, please watch my next video.
Right, so I hope you paid very careful attention to how fertilization works, and I'll break it into 3 different steps in the next 3 slides. Alright, so in the first step, the penetration of the sperm. Alright, so in this sperm, okay, the sperm contains enzymes to break down the outer membrane of the egg, and this is found in the acrosome, alright, which is the head of the sperm. So it contains enzyme that would break down the outer covering, as you can see highlighted in this box over here. And when it breaks down, only the nucleus, alright, only the nucleus of the sperm will be released into the ovum. Alright, so that's the first step. Then after penetration, successful penetration, alright, the ovum itself will also undergo changes. Alright, so ovum's outer layer, okay, will undergo change. Right, the purpose is to prevent another sperm from entering. Alright, so the egg itself has its own protection, own mechanism to prevent another sperm from entering. And when one sperm successfully enter, only the nucleus. Alright, so you can see the nucleus of the ovum and the nucleus inside the head of the sperm will fuse together. Alright, so I emphasize fertilization is not just the fusion of egg and sperm, the fusion of nuclei of egg and sperm. Alright, so that's the very important keyword in the definition of fertilization, and that will help to form diploid zygote. Alright, so what does haploid and diploid mean? Simply put, alright, haploid refers to half the number of chromosomes. Alright, so for haploid sperm, it only contains 23 chromosomes, and the egg also contains 23 chromosomes, so it will restore, alright, the zygote normal chromosome number, and there will be 46 inside the zygote. Okay, so that's the definition of haploid and diploid over here. Okay, so I introduce you a new term over here, zygote, that refers to a fertilized egg. Okay, alright, so that is step number 2. Alright, and if there's no fertilization, alright, if after fertilization no other sperm can enter, and the remaining sperm will eventually die off. Alright, and recall, how many days can the sperm last? So 3 to 5 days. Alright, so they will eventually die off, and then your body will break it down and remove it, and only the fertilized egg, the zygote, will then continue to grow and divide. Alright, so that marks the first part of this video on the different steps in fertilization, and you must be able to describe and explain how fertilization happens. Alright, so commonly questions such essay questions, test, right, how fertilization happens, and you're asked to provide the step-by-step procedure. Alright, so after fertilization, part 2, I am going to talk about embryo development. Alright, so to recap over here, alright, when the egg and sperm fuse together, you get a zygote, which will further divide into an embryo, and then afterwards it will develop into a fetus inside the mother. Alright, so this is the difference in the way that we label and address. So let's take a look at embryo development. Alright, as you can see in this picture over here, a quick run through. Alright, so when the ovary release an egg, this is known as the process of ovulation, which happens at day 14. Alright, so when is the fertile period? Remember my golden number, minus 4 plus 1. So that would be day 10 to day 15. Alright, so between this period, fertilizations can happen. Alright, and then it takes about 5 to 7 days for it to move towards the uterus. So this whole process over here takes about 5 to 7 days before it gets implanted, right? Before implantation happens along uterus. Alright, so the level of progesterone we call progesterone. Alright, level of progesterone remains high even in day, right, day say day 18 to about day 23 before falling if there is no pregnancy. Alright, so I want you to think, why does the level of progesterone still remain high, past the fertile period all the way to the day 23? It's because, it's because of the number of days that it takes after fertilization for implantation to happen along the uterus. So progesterone still remain high to keep and maintain. Alright, the level of progesterone is really to maintain and thicken uterine lining for possible potential implantation. So let me bring you through step by step on the embryo development after fertilization. Alright, so I did mention this in my annotation. So let's take a look first, zygote. So after fertilization, the zygote will move towards the uterus. So take note, alright, the site of fertilization is the oviduct, but the site of implantation and development is the uterus. So there are two mechanisms that helps the zygote to move towards the uterus. Number one, the ciliary lining along the oviduct. So if I were to zoom in into the oviduct over here, alright, the lining is actually made up of hair-like projection, alright, ciliary lining. So it acts like a sweep, alright, that will sweep the zygote towards the uterus. So where else can we find ciliary lining? If you can remember in our earlier chapter, right? Trachea and the bronchus. Alright, that will help to sweep all the dust inside the mucus out of our respiratory tract. Okay, and then the second mechanism is muscular contraction. Okay, so the oviduct is a muscular tube. So the contraction and relaxation of the muscles will also push the zygote towards the uterus. So these are the two ways to help the fertilized egg move towards the uterus. Number 2, alright, the zygote will then divide itself to form an embryo. And during this process of cell division, the energy required is actually provided by the nutrients stored in eggs. And this energy is only sufficient for early development of zygote into embryo. Alright, it's a very temporary measure until it is successfully implanted into the uterus and will obtain all these nutrients from the mother's blood instead. Lastly, implantation. So this entire process takes about 5 to 7 days. Alright, so about a week after successful fertilization. I'll write it down over here. So approximately 1 week after fertilization. Alright, so if implantation is not successful, it will not be considered as a successful pregnancy. So I mentioned before, successful pregnancy must have successful fertilization and successful implantation before it is known as a successful pregnancy. If not, then the fertilized egg that floats freely, alright, that continues to float freely and not implanted will eventually be discharged in the next cycle, alright, if it's not implanted. Alright, so another possible question that exam may ask is describe the process of embryo development, and you are expected to describe and explain these 3 different steps as seen on the screen. Alright, so in this video, you will see a fertilized zygote developing into an embryo. How is it possible to be captured? Alright, I believe, I'm not too sure of the source, but I believe, alright, this video is taken after a IVF procedure. Alright, so after IVF is done, where the sperm is inseminated into eggs, the doctors will still observe under the microscope for about a week or 2 to observe and to filter out the fertilized eggs and see how well they develop before implanting directly into the uterus. Alright, so let's take a look. Alright, so I'll just cut off the audio and you can see that this is day 3 after fertilization happens and the embryos continue to divide and multiply in numbers, as you can see. So the doctors will observe for about a week under the microscope and will constantly update the couple about the successful development of the fertilized eggs, and you can see that at this stage it's known as morula. So for your understanding, the morula and the blastocyte, alright, is actually part of the embryo. So all you need to know is the word embryo, but different names are given at different stage of the development. So once it continues to expand, okay, showing signs of successful development, the doctors will then filter out all the successful eggs, and then they will ask the couple, alright, how many of this would you like to implant in the uterus? Usually IVF couple will implant at least 2, alright, at least 2 for successful developed egg into the uterus, because there's also a chance where implantation will not happen successfully. So the chance of getting twins in IVF is also pretty high if both eggs implanted are successfully grow and develop. Alright, so that marks the end of the development of zygote, and after it's successfully implanted, it will then form the placenta for the exchange of nutrients and waste product between the mother and the child for across 9 months before it is delivered. Alright, so let's do a quick summary of 12.3 and 12.4. Menstruation is very important to prepare the mother, alright, to prepare females for the possibility of getting pregnant. And ovulation helps with the release of an egg each month, one egg each month. And when this mature egg is released, there are two possible outcomes. One is fertilization due to sexual intercourse and not being fertilized. Alright, so if it's successfully fertilized, it will then develop into an embryo implanted in the uterus and then further develop into a fetus before delivering at the end of 9 months. Alright, and that marks the end of 12.4. If there's any question, I'll address on Wednesday when I see you, and then we are coming to the end of the chapter very soon. The last part on HIV and AIDS is a pretty short one, and it's something that you have some common knowledge about. So when I see you on Wednesday, I'll finish up chapter 12 before we proceed on to the last two chapters of the entire syllabus. Alright, so see you, and make sure you fill in your notes properly and ask questions when you see me in the next lesson.